and this is what I'm actually doing today. I know I said last time that was a bad idea, and you know what? This is really just like bottom of the barrel stuff. Not as bad as the gas station stuff.
It's a little bit better.
But it was. I was at a friend's house over the weekend, and I guess his brother had brought a whole bunch of these by, and he didn't want them. So he was just like saying, you know, hey, you could take them, and it's like, am I admitting something by like, yes, just give them all to me? I'll take them. I'll take the Coors Light from you.
I don't think so. You really can't. You can't turn down free beer no matter what kind of beer it is.
And that's what it is. That is my thought exactly. You know, because I don't drink at home much. I really don't. Maybe like on the weekend or something. Anyway, well, let's get this going. This is welcome to the Soulscast, episode 4, titled "Git Good." Now, well, let me ask you something.
Git Good.
Yeah, let me ask you.
Yep.
So, you know, on the internet, people are always typing things, spelling it differently. Okay. Do we just say "get good" or do we have to say "get good"? Does that even work?
I usually pronounce it in my head as like a Larry the Cable Guy kind of like, you know, stupid thing. Get good. But I wouldn't say it like that. I would just say, oh, get good. The whole thing is, I think, ridiculous anyway, that phrase and the way people use it, and we'll get more into that. But
yeah, so that is, so we're going to get into that. That's today's episode. I mean, it's really about how that's the whole kind of thing of Dark Souls. The whole point of it is that it's about, you know, getting good. But anyway, just to go through intros real quick, I'm Adam Blue. As always, it's never changed. I'm always Adam Blue, unless I decide to go through some legal means and change the name, maybe to like Sonic the Hedgehog, since I like him so much. But that's kind of weird. Anyway, and then with me, Shane Norton.
Hi,
this guy.
I'm Shane.
Yeah.
Yep. That's
always me. Shane Norton too. Same beard also. Although mine is not quite there yet, but you got to
just give it a little time.
Yeah, I guess so. No, but really, there's something I don't think we've talked about except from the first one. Is you actually have a pretty cool YouTube channel yourself, because you're sharing your boss fights in Bloodborne right now. So, and I think it's Shane Norton, right?
I am.
If someone was to search.
Yeah.
Shane Norton. Okay.
Yeah. There's a couple of them on YouTube. I'm the one that has a beer as a profile picture, and I have like 25 or 26 videos, and none of the other Shane Nortons have more than like, I don't know, 5 or 6. So if you search for me, it's pretty obvious which one I am. But right now it's basically just Bloodborne boss battles, because that's what I'm still playing and that's the easiest to upload. I've been playing through Guacamelee, which I've recorded the boss battles for that. They're not nearly as extensive, and it's much shorter. I might also have a means to record some Super Nintendo stuff, which we'll just be doing boss battles, but
cool.
I might be able to be doing that, so hopefully at some point soon. And I try to upload every couple of days. I have like probably 10 videos in the hopper waiting to be uploaded. So.
Okay, yeah, speaking of Super Nintendo, I forget, it's Super Ghosts and Goblins or Ghouls and Ghosts on Super Nintendo. I mean, there's Genesis, the arcade version, whatever, but that is a series that reminds me of Dark Souls because of how difficult it is. And I've actually never beaten it. I've had it on Genesis, Super Nintendo, and the Game Boy Advance when they came out with, and it's like you just keep playing it over and over to remember. I mean, it's kind of more old school, but it gives me that Dark Souls feeling, especially Demon's Crest, and I have that on Super Nintendo.
Oh, nice.
That just has that whole feel to it. That whole, those would be good recordings or footage to get up, you know, on our channels.
Yeah, I've wanted to play Demon's Crest for a while, but it's just for the cart, it's so expensive, and I
was lucky. A friend of mine was at a thrift store, saw just a bunch of video games taped together for $5, and he knew I like games, so he just got it for me.
Jesus.
And it was in there.
That's awesome.
I know.
That's a good deal.
Anyway, so let's get back to this Get Good. So, Shane, when it comes to Dark Souls, you hear people talk about Get Good. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think you mean two things. I look at some forums online. Like I said last week, I mainly go to this website called Giant Bomb. They have a pretty good, a pretty active forum community for all 4 of the Souls games. I didn't get on until Dark Souls, but there's some people in that community and elsewhere online I've seen, you know, the whole get good angle is like, I can't beat this boss. Like, oh, I can't beat Ornstein and Smo from Dark Souls. So it's like, oh, well, just get good because, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it.
I think so too, yeah.
I didn't know how to pronounce it for probably 2 years after the game came out until I watched videos.
Yeah,
I was like,
exactly.
Smog?
Yeah, I always thought that, yeah.
No, it's fine. I think, shoot, what was I saying? I think it can be used as like a derogatory kind of term, like, oh, well, you need to just get good, that's it. Like, there's nothing else to it.
Right.
Like, you automatically, like flip a switch. It's like, oh, well, stop sucking at the game and just get good.
Yeah, it's like the response instead of it almost like, I think you've touched on this before, it's like it almost like creates this like this elite, you know, like group of gamers that they're just always like, oh, well, just get good, you know. And I was, you know, I'm on NeoGAF a lot, and I remember someone was talking about the tension in the games, and the guy's reply was like, tension? There's no tension in these games. You know, and it's like, okay, maybe for some people there's not, but you know, I don't know. It's just, yeah. Any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's that aspect where people will say get good, and you know, you're either expected to be able to pick up the game and just be awesome and play it and have no problems, or you know, or you suck and you need to get good and blah blah blah. On a positive note, I think it can mean more, you do need to be somewhat good to at least beat the game. I mean, I don't consider myself that great at video games, but I can obviously play and beat the games. So just playing games, you'll eventually get good if you play long enough and you have patience, because the game just breeds it. You couldn't play the game for, let's say, 10 hours and not get better than you were at the first hour. So you have to get good to play the games to beat them, I guess. But that's the other side of the coin, I guess.
Yeah, and so I see it, you know, the same pretty much. You know, there's the response, get good, but it really does mean something, and it reminds me of when I played Ninja Gaiden on Xbox. So, you know, growing up, I think it's like as I got older, I would really recognize a hard game, and it was really easy for me to give up because there's so many other choices. I think when I was younger and on the Genesis NES, I came across a hard game, you just kind of stuck with it because you didn't really have much to choose from. Okay?
Yeah.
So Ninja Gaiden on Xbox comes along, and even though the originals were hard, the Ninja Gaiden Xbox especially was one of those games where, especially that nunchuck boss at the beginning, you know, you would go fight them, and it was just so hard. It was impossible. A lot of people just gave up, just stopped. And even for me, I'm like, wow, this game is just hard. And then as I got through it, and as I got near the end, you know, it was like easy. Like, I got good.
Yeah.
I mastered it, and I felt this sense of accomplishment that I haven't felt again since playing, you know, the Souls game. Well, Bloodborne, you know, especially. And that's to me what I think the series does that I don't think many games do. Okay? I don't think many games do it where it's like so hard, almost impossible. But then just a few little mechanics you just kind of figure out, and then all of a sudden you're mastering it, and then you're getting further, and then you're doing things you can't believe, and then you feel so awesome you want to keep playing. And you put in 40, 50, 60 hours. And yeah, I really think so. Get good, it means those two things. I think get good is like a philosophy, both good and bad, of how the Souls games work. So, so to get further into what makes these games them, so I wanted to talk about, like, specifically, how do you get good? What is it about the game that makes them hard? And then what is it that you do to get good? And I'll start real quick. So what I like about the game, and what I liked about Ninja Gaiden, what I like about action games in general, because I'm not an RPG guy. I don't care about RPGs. I like Twitch-based real-time combat. So being able to block in the Dark Souls games and then being able to dodge, sidestep. I love that type of action. I remember when I played, and it wasn't even Wolfenstein, I think it was Doom, where I realized there's strafing, where I can like strafe, and like kind of like line up my shots. I think that added like an element, another layer of the gameplay. So I always look for that in games. So with Bloodborne, I'm playing it because that was the game that really got me into the series. So I'm playing Bloodborne, and I love that I can just like roll, sidestep. Like it's really about timing. If I can get it at the right time and make the attack. So when people are playing these games, it's like they have to, know when to dodge, when to sidestep. It's almost like the game is giving you the like cheat codes right there. They're like, all you have to do is dodge the attack. Just do it. So
basically, that's really it.
Yeah, and so and to me, we'll get this later, like what games are harder than the others. So for me, getting into Dark Souls after Bloodborne, it's a little slower paced. I also have a shield, so it's been easier for me to like use the shield, or use the shield at the right time, and then dodge and all that. So as you're playing, so for the mechanics of these Souls games, it's about being cautious, because really at any time an enemy could show up that will kill you right away. And then at the same time, it's using the right weapon, using the right attack, and then dodging or blocking at the right time. It's like the tools are given to you, and you just have to do it right. It's not like it's not like a first-person shooter. Like Call of Duty. Not that I'm. It's really easy to make fun of Call of Duty. I think they're fun, but you just kind of jump in, you just shoot. Run around, shoot. That's essentially what they are. There's obviously some thinking. Sometimes you got to take cover and you shouldn't be out in the open. But with the Dark Souls series, with the Souls series, it's asking you to like stay back and think about your surroundings. And so to me, like that is what I like in a game. And I think it just makes it where that is what's hard about it, if that makes sense. What's hard about it is anything can kill you immediately. Just use the tools, think and use your tools correctly to get past it.
Yeah, that's a really good point about the game giving you basically everything you need to know to beat it and be successful right at the beginning. Obviously upgraded weapons help and all that, but just knowing how to play, knowing when to roll or when to do the dodge step, Bloodborne, or when to, let's say, use a shield in the other games or try to parry in all the games. Just learn it. And as you play, if you have never played the games, let's say, as you play, you'll start to understand the different scenarios better. You'll start to understand when to use certain things. And what I like about the games is there's no wrong weapon. Bloodborne, there's very few weapons. The other games, there's at least 100 probably, and all of them, but there's no real wrong weapon, with maybe like a few exceptions. You could basically use anything that you're comfortable with, and you can get through the game just fine. I mean, people like beat all of them on like soul level 1 with like the crappiest weapons, and like I saw a video of a guy trying to go through Bloodborne just using his fists.
Yeah,
and I think I don't know if he beat it. I didn't really watch many of the videos, but he got through at least the first few. He beat Father Gascoigne. He beat Vicar Amelia, I think. So, so it's I guess that kind of.
Yeah, I see. I know what you're saying, because like when I play, my goal is, because the Soul series allows you to create a character how you want it to play. My whole thing, because they're difficult, is strength. I want to be able to deal as much damage as possible so I can quickly dispatch an enemy, quickly dispatch of a boss. So I'm always strength, great sword, totally upgraded as much as possible, so then I can just like quickly get that health down, because I'm going to make enough mistakes, dumb mistakes, where I will get myself killed, even though they're avoidable. Part of it is me wanting to play aggressively. The other part is just, making dumb mistakes. So being able to take off so much damage, that's how I play. Now, and there's some people that might not play that way, because I see weapons that have very low damage, but people like to use them because of the move set. So for them, to be good, they really have to know how to parry, and I'm really bad at parrying. In Demon Souls, because I just started that, and I'm back at Dark Souls 2 so I can finish it. Demon Souls seems to be easy to parry, but when I'm playing Dark Souls 2, I never even really did it. Yeah, I just, for some reason, I'm having a hard time with that. Bloodborne, it's actually pretty easy, but it's just someone, if they master the parrying, the rolling, yeah, you can use your fists, you can use a weapon, and it just takes time.
Yeah,
but you can do it.
Yeah, it's like a war of attrition. You, like in your case, and it kind of mine too. You need to do more damage than the boss does before you make more mistakes than the boss does. So you're,
Yep.
Because I'm pretty, I don't want to say careless, but I make a lot of mistakes too. And at least Bloodborne rewards you for being super aggressive.
Yes.
The other games not as much. You can still be aggressive, but Bloodborne, it's really like, and that's what I learned my first playthrough of Bloodborne. I used the Hunter Axe, and I wasn't that aggressive. I'd stay back. It has a great reach, so you can hit things from pretty far away.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going through on my New Game Plus with the Stake Driver, which has 0 range. You have to be right up in the enemy's face. I found that most bosses have been kind of easier because you just go up to them and just slam them, and they'll die, pretty fast. Like I said, probably 3 times now. Father Gascoigne I beat on my New Game Plus, my first try with the Stake Driver, like a 2-minute video, which is on my YouTube if you guys want to check it out.
Right.
But my first playthrough, it took me at least a dozen attempts, and it was like hiding behind the gravestones and using like the charge spin attack with the axe, and so it was much easier with that weapon. And I don't even remember what we were even talking about.
Well, yeah, no, so yeah, the types of weapons. So in Bloodborne, what helped me was, Bloodborne's about more aggressive play, and they throw more enemies at you at once.
Yeah.
So I started with the axe, and this was the first time I was playing, and I was having a hard time, so I went back and I picked the threaded cane because I heard everyone talk about, oh, it's like Castlevania, and I love Castlevania, so I was like, okay, I'll get a threaded cane. And it's funny, so the threaded cane in whip mode deals less damage, so I'm, like I was saying in Dark Souls, I like something with more damage, but it's the range it had and the reach that the whip mode.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So like I could just whip and then hit 5 enemies next to me from far away, and bosses, and that's the thing, the bosses took a lot longer for me, but I would be, the sidestepping is quicker than rolling. And,
yeah, it definitely is.
So it was a little quicker. Like I remember when I first figured out you can sidestep through an attack. Like if you time it right.
Yeah.
You kind of have to learn it from boss to boss. But I was like, oh, I know. Or you always go to their left or right. There's something like that with a boss.
Yeah.
Like I know if I was always sidestepping to their right, it was easier for me. Anyway, it was like a different way to play, but it was figuring out how to do it with any weapon. I mean, and then sometimes I feel like, well, am I really good, or is it just because I'm using this weapon? I'm just cheesing it because I'm just using the only weapon I can use.
I've thought about that too. Yeah. It kind of sets you up to be able to do either. I guess you can kind of cheese your way through the game. I mean, I said before that you can't really beat the games if you're not at least like a little bit good at them. Like you need to have some skill.
Yeah.
But there's definitely weapons throughout the whole series, and magic, not really in Bloodborne, but magic in some of the other games that you could, if you just boost up your whatever the magic stats are and just get some of the powerful like crystal soul spear spells or whatever, and you can just sit back and just whip those at almost every single boss, and it's really not that hard. But you still need to be good enough to get there and get through the levels and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so getting that out of the way, obviously we didn't go into like a thesis or in as much detail as we can about the gameplay mechanics, and we're going to be doing this Soulscast for as long as possible, so we can always break things down. But we'll move on. So, does each game, to you, do you think each game presents a different difficulty, or do you think they're pretty much the same?
I think there is a different kind of difficulty kind of for almost every game. I think every game has all all right, every game has a similar kind of difficulty, but it's presented in a different way. Like Demon Souls and Dark Souls, I feel have a lot more like environmental hazards, level hazards, like especially I think Demon Souls. There's lots of places to fall off cliffs and die, and I won't really spoil too much because you're not far into it. But like World 2, Stonefang Tunnel has some of that, like falling great depths or falling in lava. World 4, which is Shrine of Storms, has some of that, and I think the second part, there's lots of like walking along really narrow, like outcroppings of like mountains, I guess. And then World 5 is the Valley of Defilement, which is basically like Blighttown from Dark Souls, or the gutter from Dark Souls 2 if you got there yet. But it's, lots and lots of falling hazards. So there's that, and then. You know, Dark Souls has that too, but it has Tomb of the Giants, which is pitch black, and that's pretty hard. Yeah. And then, what the heck did I write? Oh, and Blighttown, like I just said, has the falling hazards, and then like the poison swamp at the bottom, and then even Sen's Fortress, which is full of traps. God. So there's all that kind of that
see the Sen's Fortress one, like. I felt like, well, at first, these axes are coming at me at Sen's Fortress, swinging, and I'm like, oh, fuck, platforming sections. And then I was like, okay, I'm getting this. I'm just getting through all this. And then I get to the part where there's an archer. But I wasn't doing anything with archery. Like, I haven't really been doing that. So I'm like, oh, man, what am I getting? And this guy killed me. It's like, I had to figure out. But then at that point, too, it has some weird way it does the axes that you have to, like, go through. Oh, man, it's funny because after going through that when I played Dark Souls, that's one area that I never bothered like walking through again to try to like find things. Yeah, I get F that area.
Yeah, it's tough. Like the first couple times you go through it, I played Dark Souls recently, right before Bloodborne came out, and I can get through Sen's Fortress pretty quickly now. But like the first few times you do it, you're going at a snail's pace, like real slow, because there's the axes, there's the big boulders that fly at you, and then when you get to the top, those big giant knights or big giants that are throwing boulders at you. So that kind of in general, I feel like it's basically not in Bloodborne. Bloodborne has some of like the poison lakes or poison swamps, whatever they are.
Yeah, it has environmental stuff that I think are more like secondary interesting things to come across, like when an amygdala like picks you up and then gives you frenzy and then kills you. Yeah,
that's true.
But it's
I thought about them.
Yeah, but it's not like an immediate thing. Like that would only happen if you like happen to get over there, Whereas you're right.
Yeah.
Oh well, then there is the Nightmare. That's funny. It's like the same enemy. There's that Nightmare Frontier where there are the rock throwing guys.
Yeah, those guys are pretty similar to the Sen's Fortress guys. Yeah. I forgot about them. They're kind of annoying because you have to, pay attention to them.
At the bottom of Blighttown, right before you fight the Queen Quelaag or whatever, there's guys throwing boulders.
Oh yeah,
oh my god, I hated that part. But okay, so
Dark Souls 2, I think, has some of that still. It has the gutter, which is like Blighttown 2.0 or like Valley of Defilement 3.0. So it has that, and it has other areas. Like Earthen Peak has some poison stuff, and Iron Keep has, I think, like some lava stuff.
Right.
But I feel the difficulty in that game comes more from mobs of enemies. They tend to throw, I feel, a lot more enemies at you than Demon Souls or Dark Souls. So I feel like that's part of the difficulty there. And then Bloodborne is more of the same, where the difficulty, at least in the levels, is there's lots of different enemies and enemy placement, not a lot of falling hazards or level hazards. And then as far as the bosses, I don't know, I feel like all the bosses in all the games, each game has different enough bosses where I can't necessarily say one game has like radically different bosses, except maybe Bloodborne, I guess. But at any rate, yes, I think the difficulty is a similar kind of difficulty throughout the 4, but it's also presented in, I think, pretty different ways throughout the 4.
Well, let me ask you, like, does it seem like to you that the games get easier, maybe by the way they're made, or because you're a veteran at this point?
I think, having played the games for a long time,
because we've mentioned this before in the first episode, but you've started since Demon Souls, whereas I just started from Bloodborne, so you have a different perspective.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. We can probably, I think, go into this a little bit later. I would say Demon Souls is probably the hardest, but for you, I don't think Demon Souls would be the hardest for you, because you have a lot of built-up experience playing the games.
Right.
Going forward, each game so far, even though they've been pretty different from each other, the core mechanics of them all have almost been identical. So, a roll in Demon Souls works exactly the same as it does in Bloodborne. So if you start with, well, any of them, if you start with one game and then play through it and beat it, and you go to any of the other games, you'll be better at it automatically, just because you are better at the mechanics, and the levels are different, and all the enemies are different, and bosses are different, and there's some different things, but it doesn't matter that much. So I would say I thought Bloodborne was the easiest of the four, and that's partly because I've played it for I played the other games a lot, and partly because they took away the falling hazards, the level hazards. So maybe it's like a mix of both, I guess.
So for me, and it's because of the way I started. I started with Bloodborne. I thought Bloodborne was so hard, even though I was able to keep trucking along, whereas with all the other ones that I did play for a second, I was like, F this. But that could be just it's different kind of gameplay in the sense that it's faster, or it could just be that it was a little easier. But I found Dark Souls to be maybe on par. I think when it came to bosses, I still think Bloodborne has harder bosses. Like even Father Gascoigne, I would rather fight any boss in Dark Souls, even though I haven't done the DLC, than I would fight Father Gascoigne. And but yeah, with Dark Souls, each boss, like, the only boss that was really a problem was when I got to, what's it called? Capra. Was it Capra Demon? The one in this smaller area, and there's two dogs at first. And it's like, what? And see, then I feel like I'm not good because I cheesed that boss by going up the stairs and then waiting for him to try to come up, and he falls, and then I jump on him. And then I do it again. So am I really good? Or did I just cheese him,
No, I would say you're still good, because that battle sucked anyway, because it's a tiny room, you get the two dogs, there's no room to move around, so
that was kind of like a test, in a way. The developer was kind of like testing, I think, early on, because it's like essentially the second boss. So,
basic.
So, but other than that, the hardest boss for me was Ornstein and Smo.
Definitely.
That was the hardest boss until I figured out how to do it. But at the same time, you can do it in two ways, since it is two enemies. You get something different if you kill one first over the other. So I killed the Dragon Slayer first. So then by killing Smo last, they get bigger or whatever. All I did was use the pillar to kind of like block myself, So I was using the environment, and I'm always thinking, am I just like, cheesing to kill him? Whereas at first I was always killing Smo first because it was easier for some reason. But then, whatever they call it when Ornstein becomes bigger, Mega Ornstein, whatever. That was just way too hard. He would just do a AoE attack that would just kill me all the time, and then I was like, anyway, I repeated that over and over and over and over and over. But then once I figured it out, I was like, okay, I got this. Now, Dark Souls 2 is like, Dark Souls 2 is a game that I want us to have a podcast dedicated on, because
me too.
I don't feel it is as good as Dark Souls and Bloodborne, but I feel that it to me is like a Dark Souls adventure. Like it's its own like side Dark Souls game, because I think it presents the world and the gameplay differently. That doesn't necessarily make it worse, but it's like a good idea that's a little more refreshing in a way. Anyway, so far none of the bosses have really been a pain. A lot of times I get into it and then like I'll get killed immediately, and I'll be like, okay, I know what to do.
Yep.
And then, or it's one of those things that actually happens in all games. This is part of the Get Good, is where you kind of have an idea that, you know what, I shouldn't be fighting this boss yet. Now, I could, you know, if I was good enough, but maybe I should explore some more areas, maybe upgrade my weapon a little more. That happened with Freyja, I think it was called, Duke's,
Yeah,
the spider.
The big spider there.
Yeah,
Yep.
so when I was first fighting it, it was just taking off such little health that I was like, man, I'm not doing anything to this. I'm wasting my time. So then I waited and did it again. But
Yep.
so then playing, so in Dark Souls 2, it's funny. I don't feel dread in Dark Souls 2. I don't feel like tension in Dark Souls 2. I don't feel it, but I think that's okay because it still does something else, and that's, like, again, another podcast for another time. But so playing Demon Souls, and maybe this is, so Demon Souls seems easier so far. I've only played through the first area, and I haven't completed the first area really. I just got back to the Nexus, but it wasn't too difficult. My death was actually a fall when I died.
There you go.
I fell off the side of the castle, and it did feel it didn't feel as slow as Dark Souls for some reason. It felt like it had some good momentum where it just felt good, actually. Like, it really stands the test of time, considering these games got so popular. They can throw more money at them to really refine them. I think Demon Souls still has really good mechanics that work with the mastering mechanic, where you can still get good at it.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and so I'm still finishing Dark Souls 2. I'm actually way close to the end. I already got the King's Ring, and I'm going into the different places now. And I read, though, and that's the thing, you know, and this can actually get to another part real quick if we want to talk about. So what's interesting about the Souls games is there's so many different things you can do, or ways to do things, that how would you ever know unless you read about it on the internet, okay? So how would I have ever known in Dark Souls 2, there's the boss, I forget her name. I really don't know their names until I go back and, like, upload my recordings or read about them.
Yeah.
But it's in Earthen Peak. It's the poison lady.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I beat her, and that was hard. But that's when I'm first using items I never do. I'm doing something that makes my poison resistance up, so I can fight her and not get poisoned. And then later I read something about burning the windmill, so it makes the poison go away. Now, you know, on one hand you say, well, how would you ever know that? On the other hand, people do leave these hints around, you know, with the soapstones and the messages, actually. And so I did read that in the message. I just didn't know what it meant. I went up to everything, and nothing was happening. You just had to be in a certain spot to do it. But I think that's another layer of difficulty these games have, where it can actually, you can make the game easier for you if you can figure out these little tricks or little hints. You know, do you have any examples, can you think of, off the top of your head, where this happens?
That's a good point. The difficulty being coming from, like, the game being so obscure and obtuse.
Right.
With
like maybe when to use an item at a certain time, or using something against a certain enemy. I know I read, and see, here's the thing with Dark Souls 2, sometimes I will read a little bit, and it's like I don't want to, but sometimes it's just like I want to experience everything in the game, so sometimes I kind of read, and I started reading something and I stopped, but there's an enemy in the game, in Dark Souls 2, where if you have souls on you, these specific souls on you, it makes the enemy easier to fight. Like if they're in your inventory. So so I read about that and I was like, okay, well, I don't want to read where they're all at, but I like that I have that idea, because I don't want that to be something I'm stuck on later, you know, and I don't know, but I think that's another interesting thing, because it's like, okay, well, there's a way to make that boss easier. You know, Bloodborne had some crazy stuff, like, you know, holding that tonsil stone, you know, to get so that enemy takes you, or the amygdala takes
Yeah.
you somewhere, whereas you might not know to get it, or you did it too early or too late, or you encountered them, and there's these little things, and I think that's like it's like allowing the player to explore the game fully if they want to be really rewarded in how they play. Or someone that just likes a challenge, they don't really care too much to read about it, so they're going to miss out on these things. The game's still going to be difficult for them, but they're going to get through it. Or for people like I think kind of like me, where I'm really interested in some things and I don't want to miss out. So I will kind of read up on stuff sometimes, just to kind of understand, like, oh, so I can go to this whole new area if I do this, or this will allow me to have an awesome weapon, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That when this usually happens is like in a Souls game, and this is part of the difficulty too, is finding out where to go.
Yes.
Especially in Dark Souls, I wouldn't know where to go, and so I'm going into areas where I'm getting my ass kicked, and I'm like, what do I do? So I kind of read online, like, where should I go after this? And really it's anywhere, because if you're good enough, you can go anywhere. But it might say, if you're, new at this game, it's best to go this way, and then you can get this sword or this item to help you with this. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see. Yeah. But I mean, I think, in my opinion, that is another layer that adds to the difficulty or makes it easy. It's like you get more choices,
Yeah. The game being very, like I said, I guess obtuse about some of those weird things, like that Dark Souls 2 battle, and I can't remember the name of that stupid boss. But I didn't know about burning the windmill. I had it because I was obsessed and I couldn't stop myself from reading about the game.
Yeah.
So I'd read it, so I was able to do it fine. On my second playthrough in New Game Plus, I burned the windmill, but there's a glitch where I burned the windmill too early or something. It doesn't drain the poison, so I had to fight it with the poison anyway, and that was so annoying.
Yeah.
But I feel like every game has a few of those weird things. Like Bloodborne, you have to get the password to go through some door. I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, to get to the Forbidden Woods. Yeah.
Yeah, the woods. You have to
forest
get the you have to get the password from that little cutscene that plays after you kill Amelia. And then I'm trying to think, in Dark Souls, you have to buy that crest to get to where
the Torius or whatever it's called, crest.
Yeah, which that's not too confusing, because you go into the blacksmith's his inventory and it's right there, and it's like at the 10,000 and 20,000 souls. So you're like, obviously I need to buy this, and the door to it is pretty close by. So I guess that's not a huge one. I can't think off the top of my head. But at the same
time, that's good that you brought that up, because this happened in Bloodborne. Like, it's when I see you can buy a key or buy something that seems like a key, it's like, well, I'm sure there's a way to earn it in-game, so I'm just going to keep playing until I, run into it.
Yep.
Yeah. But you don't know if you're going to earn it or you actually have to spend the souls, Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting way to go about it. Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to speak on that?
I know there's a lot of that weird stuff to try to figure out in these games, and I'm generally I'm really bad at figuring stuff out anyway. So if I'm like really stuck, I'm just gonna look it up online. Like if it's my first playthrough at least, because I don't.
Yeah.
I want to just play. I want to experience it. I want to play. I don't want to get stuck for 5 hours on some stupid thing where you have to buy the key. That was another thing in Bloodborne. You have to buy a chieftain emblem, which opens the big gate to the shit. I can't think of any of these.
Are you talking about right after Cathedral, the Cathedral Ward? That gate?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the gate that leads you up to the Vicar Amelia fight.
But you don't have to buy the key.
Can you go around it?
Yeah, if you get Bloodstarved Beast.
Yep.
If I remember correctly, I think if you do Old Yarnum first and get Bloodstarved Beast, I think that is the way around it. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, because I ended up I didn't want to buy it. It was one of those things where I was thinking, man, you can buy the key, but what if I can earn it? And then when I was looking
Yeah.
up what to do in Old Yarnum, I came across that. And I think that's another good example of, where they add that, like you can buy to get past, but then you don't want to miss things, and that's how I am. I look up stuff. So like when I beat an area, when I think I've cleared an area, sometimes I'll go on Reddit or another forum, and I'll kind of look at maybe there's more stuff I can do in that area, and sometimes it leads to whole new areas, whole new secrets that are part of the game, and it's like, well, shit, and then a lot of the reasons we do this, and you might agree with me, is we've got kids, and so we don't want to like, as much as we'd want to sit there and spend our time, it's like we have this time allotted. We want to kind of we take our time, but we want to kind of know what's going on, get a heads up on like what to do in an area, so we don't have to be stuck for 5 hours.
Yeah. I know some people can reason through the entire game by themselves and they can figure everything out, and I've never been like that. It's I guess it's my problem, but I don't know.
You know what? And
if I'm really stuck, let's just look it up.
Yeah, and I remember like thinking back, I did that when I was younger, even without the internet. So it's not like, oh, the internet's here, all of a sudden games are easy. So I remember Quack Shot on the Sega Genesis was a game I loved. I don't know if you ever played it. It was the Donald Duck. It was amazing. I
don't have.
You need to play it. It still stands. It stands up to this day. So I'm in this temple, and as soon as you get into the room, the ceiling comes down, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what do I do? And there's symbols on the floor, but even if you step on them, nothing happens. And then I just die. Okay, I just keep getting smushed, and I didn't know what to do. So, in the instruction manual, there's a phone number you can call. So I called them. I remember asking my mom, "Can I call?" Because awesome. I don't know what to do. So I called them, and I remember how they told me. They were like, because they kind of explained, instead of just telling me what to do, they're like, well, you get a map, you get a piece of paper in the game that says 1 star, 2 moon, 3, like 1 sun, 2 moon, 3 star. It just says that. And they were saying, you get that. And so when you go into the room, on the floor, you see a symbol for a sun, a moon, and star. 1 sun, 2 moon, 3 star.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, so I go in there and you're supposed to jump on these symbols in that order, and then it stops the ceiling from crushing you.
That's awesome.
Now, that could be just today. If I'm playing Bloodborne, walk into a room, gonna get crushed, and I can't figure it out. You're gonna go online. You're gonna look it up, because it's funny. That's what these games do. These Souls games, they have it. The inventory items might have a description, might explain what to do. But anything else you wanted to touch on? On that?
Of that. In Bloodborne, the when you have to when you go through Bergenworth and you have to jump into that lake to fight Rom, I was reading online. A lot of people were like, "Man, this doesn't make any sense." I was walking around for an hour trying to figure out where to go, like all this stuff. And you could either spend an hour walking around trying to figure it out, or there's enough clues. The old guy in the wheelchair is pointing at the lake, and the key to the lunarium says something about he left his secrets in the lake or something like that. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize any of that stuff in my first playthrough. I just figured I'm gonna jump off this ledge, and if I die, the lamp is like 10 seconds away. So there's no risk. Yeah. So I was like, whatever.
It's funny.
I was like, oh, there you go.
I was thinking the same thing. Is I didn't even pick up on the clue. I just was like, you know what? Some games do that sometimes, where they make you jump. I'll just go ahead and do it, and it actually worked. But anyway, so let me move on to this, maybe our last part of this, and I think it ties up everything together. So with these Souls games, and I think you would agree, because we talked about this, for veterans of the series, they tend to get not necessarily easier, but we've already mastered them, so we could play the next one and master it. Should the developers start making later entries in the series? And actually we didn't talk about this, but since E3, Demon Souls 3 is actually going to be next year, early next year, spring next year, which is pretty quick if you think about it. But all these games,
Yeah.
and they're going to make more. They said this isn't the last one, but it's the last of this story, apparently. So
Yeah.
should they be making the games where they change it up enough so it's hard for veterans, or should they keep the same formula and maybe make it? And I almost think they're doing this, and I want to first state my question. So should they make the developers make this so it make future games so it's more challenging for veterans? What do you think?
Yes, they definitely should.
Yeah.
This goes back to our discussion, I think 2 weeks ago on the Dark Souls 3 rumor
Mm-hmm.
podcast episode we did.
Yeah.
You don't want the series to get too stagnant. You don't want them to churn them out too fast. Which quick aside, Dark Souls 3 is coming out about it's on the normal schedule for the Souls games.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dark Souls came out like 2 years after Demon Souls, and Dark Souls 2 was like 2.5 after Dark Souls 1. So Dark Souls 3 is going to be about 2 years after Dark Souls 2. Bloodborne being released in between kind of throws everything off.
Yeah.
It does seem like it's really soon. But I would love to see them change it up, like even drastically, make it so I think, oh, I'm a hotshot. I've played all the games. I'm gonna kick some major ass, which I never really do anyway. But I want to get destroyed by it because I'm gonna be too cocky. So something like that. And I was reading one of the links that you emailed me about that, like sci-fi souls and all this kind of stuff.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Bring it on. I would love it.
And
I would love
actually, yeah, I guess that was the link I sent. Yeah, okay, because I remember having a discussion about this before with someone, but then I think, he confirmed how he wants to kind of branch off like that. Now, okay,
Yeah.
so to speak on this difficulty thing, so first of all, in Dark Souls 2, they have that bonfire aesthetic, which is a neat idea. What that does is, and I haven't used it because I'm too scared, but you put that in the bonfire, and it makes the area pretty much a new game plus. Now,
Yeah.
I have a bunch of them. It's like I could go to a new area and do it immediately, or it's if I know I'm going to be exploring areas, I might as well use it, which I need to do that. I think it would be a good idea. For instance, Forest of the Fallen Giants, is that what it's called? Or something like that?
Yeah.
That's like a very early area. I might as well, if I'm going to be going back there, I might as well use that,
Yeah.
But, okay, so apparently in Dark Souls 3, as we've read, they're going to be doing some things like that. Apparently you can kind of like buff the boss fights. Apparently, like, so it'd be interesting to see if they do stuff, give veteran players more options to do things to make it harder. But what would also be cool is if someone played the game on the same platform, or if there was a unified Souls account where you can, the game will look at a previous save and kind of gauge its difficulty level based on how you've played a previous game. I know. Yeah, I really think that would be cool. That would be great. Like if I'm primarily PC, So I'm playing Dark Souls 2, a Scholar of the First Sin, however you pronounce that, on PC. So let's say I get Dark Souls 3 on PC, and then it looks at my save game. They're like, okay, he went through New Game, some New Game Plus, so maybe they find a way to make the enemies difficulty between New Game and New Game Plus. We're a little harder, or maybe where they're like, okay, well then the bosses will actually have maybe a stage 3 moveset. So there's like, the thirds where maybe, because apparently Dark Souls 3 is going to do what Bloodborne does, and where the bosses will move into like a second form or second, but maybe they could do something where then there's 3, 4, but I mean, that's just crazy ideas, but I think that's a way to kind of keep it fresh, keep it like a unified, Souls account.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I think that would be great. Anything they can do to make it different, to change the difficulty, to just keep veteran players on their toes.
Yeah.
I mean, Bloodborne. I think Bloodborne was a step in the right direction because they did a lot of different things. But I want them to continue doing that. I don't want to see like Dark Souls 3, fine, they can do whatever they want, but going forward, whatever the next game is going to be, do something different with the difficulty somehow. And I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but just something different, something different.
Yeah, and thinking of the games, and when I think of Bloodborne a lot after playing the other ones, I do think Bloodborne did do things differently.
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine that's always been into the Souls games, like, and I've always, envious, like, man, I wish I was into them too, so I could play. They're just hard. And I was telling him about Bloodborne and how it's like Dark Souls, and
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, I'll play it sometime. And then I said, yeah, and instead of bonfires, it's just lamps, and instead of souls, it's called blood echoes. And he's like, wait, who made this? And I go, oh no, it's from software. He's like, wait, so this is really a Souls game? So it's funny how he didn't even realize it was like a Souls game, essentially.
Wow.
He just thought it was just some other action game. So I really think, yeah, they did make it, appear different enough. And yeah, some of the gameplay is different. Even if it's not harder, I think you'd agree it's fresher.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. And I don't want to discount it too much. Bloodborne, there was some parts that were pretty difficult. Most of the main game bosses I didn't think were that hard, but those chalice dungeons, some of them are some of the hardest things I've ever done in any of the Souls games. So
yeah, and the most rewarding too, like the amygdala, defiled amygdala, like that. Oh man, that was bothering me for a while. And once I figured out what to do, it was just the most rewarding. I would get a rush of like the feeling, a warm rushing feeling coming up the back of my neck to my head.
Yeah.
like, oh, I just did it. And I'm not getting that with Dark Souls 2 though. I don't get that with any. Although, like I was saying, Dark Souls 2 to me, it's its own thing. It's kind of fresh to me. Since I just got off of Dark Souls, I think Dark Souls 2 does things good in its own way. But
I agree. Like you said, that's a podcast for another day. But I did mention the second to last boss. I found to be very, very difficult. So
cool.
Perhaps
I can't
you
wait.
will also.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Fun with that.
You know what? Something else. Maybe okay. We're probably gonna go ahead and end this podcast. Something though I wanted to touch on, and I guess we didn't, is how there's an option for co-op. And that's actually another layer that could make the game easier, essentially. It's if you summon NPCs or if you summon co-op players. Do you think, it's funny, so playing through Dark Souls and Bloodborne, I would never summon. I wanted to do it myself. In Dark Souls 2, I'm actually doing it because it's a lot more fun. I'm actually having fun summoning as many people as possible, and we just go on a rampage. But I wonder if... do you think it would be a good idea if they made it where, and maybe this is the case, I don't know this, maybe summoning has less rewards for the player?
I'm trying to remember. I haven't summoned a whole lot in like Bloodborne, let's say, and even in Dark Souls 2, I didn't summon that much.
Bloodborne,
they could do something like that. I mean, people have been, I think since Dark Souls was coming out, or Dark Souls 2, I've been reading things people say like, oh, they really need to make this game like with an easy mode or like a difficulty setting, like an actual difficulty setting, which I think would be horrible. But summoning help is basically easy mode. If you can't beat a boss, you summon help. And I've summoned help for lots of bosses over my Souls career, as it were. And the reward of just being able to beat the boss, I think, is enough, and then anything else is extra.
Because what the game does, what Dark Souls 2 does, and I've been doing this, is if you are summoned and you're like a certain covenant, you get special rewards, which I think is pretty cool, that angle. And I really like that because, again, I think it makes Dark Souls 2 a totally different game, but in a good way. But I think that is a good way, again, to where you can legitimately play the game and kind of make it a little easier for you so you can still go through it, because you summoned someone. I don't think that takes away from anyone. Would you still agree that you still have to be good, even if you're summoning?
You do.
Yeah.
If you never played a Souls game and you picked it up for the first time, let's say Dark Souls 2, and you were fighting even like the Dragon Rider at the very beginning. If you never ever played a Souls game and someone handed you the controller at that boss, like at the fog gate, with one or two people that came in to help you, well, they would probably just kill the boss. But I don't know. It'd still be difficult. So summoning really handicaps it, I guess, because when you start summoning people, it just gets
ridiculously
almost always just
easy.
super easy. Yeah, super easy.
So, okay, so that was funny with Bloodborne. I was telling you I always had PSN problems, so I could never be online for it. But the way to summon it was actually a usable item, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in the Dark Souls games, it's not a usable item, but you have to be you have to be human. You have to be in human form.
Yeah.
So for me, the beginning of Dark Souls 2, I didn't have humanity, or they call it human effigy, that much. So when I died, I would have to just play the bosses dead, so you don't really have a choice. And I think that's kind of cool. I think that there's kind of that balance there. Like if you're good enough, or if you're bad anyway, like it's still hard because you can't summon. It makes you really think about it. So, well, no, okay, I think that's it. We got a pretty good show. This is about an hour-long show. Anything else you want to bring up?
This has absolutely nothing to do with any of the Souls games.
Okay.
But and I tweeted about it last night. The PT demo, the Silent Hills game that isn't going to be made. I played it for the first time last night, and it is scary as shit.
Yes.
I'm just going to say that. If anyone has it on the PlayStation 4 and hasn't played it, try it, preferably with the lights out, and the volume up. And my wife, it was making fun of me last night because I just stopped playing. But
awesome. No, they did a good job with that.
I'm gonna go. Yeah, they did. I'm disappointed it's not gonna happen, but I'm gonna go back and play through it and try to beat it at some point. But yeah, that's my advice to anyone that has it on the PlayStation 4 that hasn't played it yet.
No, that's actually good. It's funny you bring that up. It reminds me of the Final Destination movies because they're so. It's to me they're so. It bothers me so much, the tension. It's like in PT, something's about to happen. In Final Destination, someone's about to die. So I always prefer, if I'm going to watch Final Destination, which I love them, I need to have someone with me, like, to watch it. So like when I was playing PT, it's like I had it. I kind of went through the first time. I was like, okay. And then my brother was telling me he was too scared to play it. So I was like, well, just play with me. So it's great how a game can do that, and it's similar to the tension that is built up in a Souls game. It really is.
No, it kind of is. So that just brings everything full circle, and there you go.
Yeah, there you go. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching or listening, depending on how you're getting this on bluegamer.net or YouTube or whatever. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.